Welcome. I see that some people are starting to enter the workshop. We're about 1 minute before we're going to get started. So now's a great time to go and make sure that you have your supplies for the art part of the workshop today. It's also a good chance to get up and stretch, move around. We're going to be here for about 45 minutes. If this is your first time joining us for a Zoom workshop here at the National Museum of Asian Art and the Smithsonian American Art Museum, we are asking today that you put any questions that you have in the Q&A, which you'll see at the bottom corner. It says Q&A with 2 chat boxes. And then if you want to speak to us directly, you can look in the chat. We'll be putting messages and things in there as well. As we get started and wait for everyone to arrive, we have 2 artworks here for you to look at. They're both of cherry blossoms in DC, but we were hoping that you could tell us some of the things that you see and questions that you have about these artworks that are both in our collections at the Smithsonian. Oh, okay. So we have a first question about how cherry blossoms grow. As an art museum, I don't know if I have quite the answer for that, but I don't know if one of my panelists might just know by chance, but I do have some other really interesting facts that I could share, unless someone else has an idea of how they grow. All right. Well, one of the things that you can see is that they do grow on trees. You can see that by looking at the art. So maybe that was part of the question. The other question that someone said is they like the art, but they want to know how you make the different artwork. So maybe Ellen, you could answer how the one on the left was made, and then maybe Leah, you could say how that one was made.
Okay, sorry about that. So it's a print, so it's made using ink on paper, and then the design is made and it's pressed onto the paper. And so it's a different, there are different kinds of prints that are made. And so I don't know if any of you were able to come to the one we did about prints the other another time, but basically that's the idea is you have a design and you have ink and then you print it onto the paper.
And the other one is actually this made with the same process, just with black ink instead of different colors of ink.
All right. We do have some more questions, but I do want us to kind of move forward with the workshop, and we'll definitely be able to get to the other questions that haven't been answered yet later on in the workshop. So let's move to the next slide. So welcome today. Today we're joined by 2 Smithsonian museums, the National Museum of Asian Art and the Smithsonian American Art Museum's Lunder Conservation Center. And we have 4 different panelists today who are going to talk about taking care of art on the theme of cherry blossoms. So next slide. My name is Matthew Lesnoski. I work at the Freer and Sackler, which is the National Museum of Asian Art. And I work in the education department, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Ellen, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Chase, and I'm the objects conservator at the Freer and Sackler. And we'll talk a little bit more about what a conservator is during the session. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand this over to Leah, who's going to tell you about herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Bright, and just like Ellen, I'm an objects conservator. But I work at the Smithsonian American Art Museum at the Lunder Conservation Center, and we often call the Smithsonian American Art Museum SAM. So you hear us say that quite a bit. And I'll pass it along to Laura.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Hoffman, and I am a volunteer at the Lunder Conservation Center at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, or as Leah just said, SAM. So I like to help out with all of the programs. Oops. There we go.
So like I was saying, the first thing we're going to talk about is what a conservator is. And I don't know if anybody's come before or might know, but does anybody have an idea? What is a conservator? Do you know what a conservator does? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you have an idea. And then if not, or even if you do, we can talk about it a little more and let you know what we are. So if you're not sure what a conservator is, another thing is maybe take a look at the picture and tell me some of the things that you notice. There are a lot of different things to look at in this picture, which might help give you an idea or might give you some questions about things. So let's see if anybody has any comments or questions about what they're seeing in the slide.
It looks like we have a fair amount, Ellen.
Oh, good.
Someone said restore artifacts. That came from Chris. Angela says someone who takes care of the art. And then Lucas says fixes and restores objects. So I think there's a wide range of people who might know what a conservator is.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have a really pretty good idea. So what a conservator is basically we take care of the artwork in museum collections. And so we're kind of like doctors or art doctors for the pieces in the collection. And so, yes, we take care of the art. And we look at it in terms of trying to prevent any damage from happening. And then if something happens, then we also fix it. And so in this image, you can see in this picture, I'm actually cleaning a ceramic or made out of clay which is glazed. And so tell me, can you see any of the different kinds of tools or things that I might be using there? And we'll talk about this more later. So this is just to give you an idea, but if there's anything you guys notice, let me know. Could you notice what's in my hand or maybe what's in that container next to it? What do those look like to you? Toothpicks. Well, actually what they are is swabs. So kind of like a cotton swab, but special ones that we use. And sometimes we roll them ourselves. And then some of the other tools that we use and different things, like, I don't know if you guys can see me. I know not everyone can, but I'm wearing a lab coat. So why do you think I might wear a lab coat when I work? Right. So I'm protecting myself. I'm keeping myself from getting dirty, but I see somebody wrote protecting the art, and that's true. So like if I'm wearing a fuzzy sweater, or I have something like that, it keeps me from getting stuff on the art. So it has two purposes. And then I don't know if you guys can see, there's can you see that thing on the left, the kind of equipment? That's a microscope. And so that's a big version, and I don't have that here, but here I have something called an optivisor, and that helps me magnify, and I can still use my hands. And then, whoops, sorry. And the other thing I'll talk about quickly now is just that I'm not wearing them in the picture because that object doesn't need them, but most of the time we wear gloves to protect the artwork from anything on our hands. Even though we wash our hands really well, there's still oils on our hands that can hurt the artwork. And we'll show you more stuff about tools later, but for now, we're going to go on to the next slide so you guys can start your projects.
And Ellen, real quick before we start the projects, one person was curious about what glaze is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That is a really good question. Okay, so when you're making a ceramic, you use clay, and then you fire it. So you bake it, you heat it, and that makes it hard. And then sometimes you put something on top of it called a glaze, which is kind of almost like a glassy layer, and it gives you all those beautiful colors and makes it shiny, but it also protects it and makes it so that it'll hold liquid better and things like that. So I think if that doesn't answer your question, put more in the chat, but hopefully that answers what you're asking.
All right. Thank you, Ellen. So again, if you haven't already, please, this is the time to get out your different materials for today. We always make our activities very flexible. In fact, I'm going to show you two different ones using the same material, so you get your choices. The first thing we wanted you to do is to have some inspiration. You know, we're talking about cherry blossoms, but it's also the beginning of spring. And if cherry blossoms aren't around you, you can get inspiration from so many local leaves and flowers. For example, I found, and again, I never pick flowers because that's harmful to the plants. I found this flower on the ground and it was very wilted. So what I just did is I put it in a little glass of water overnight and you can see it perked right up. So this is a daffodil. And I love daffodils because they are, the start of spring and showing. So this is going to be my inspiration. So because of that, the modeling clay that I chose is this yellow one. So I just thought that would be a nice one. So I'm going to show you two different ways that you can create some artworks based on whatever flower. I will also say for you guys, I'm noticing a lot of you guys are raising the hand feature. The best way to ask us questions is to actually use the chat box or the Q&A feature. So if you have any thoughts, please share them that way. Okay, so the first way we're going to do, so again, just reviewing, I've got my modeling clay. You can use any sort of shaping tools. That could be like anything from a really dull plastic butter knife, or if you ever use any kind of carving tools for Halloween. Flowers, again, real or fake will do. And if you want after, you can use some paint once the modeling clay has dried. Play-Doh also works really well as well. Okay, so for option one, this is called Flowers in Nature. So again, you're going to choose your flower or leaf that inspires you. I've got my daffodil here. I'm looking at its shape, its texture. I'm going to zoom in close, its size, the colors. Again, I'm choosing yellow because I have it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this modeling clay and sculpt it into this one. So I actually have here this necklace from a long time ago from Hawaii that just served as that inspiration. You can see it looks very similar where it's looking at the different petals and sculpting them. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I've got my ball here and I'm going to be looking at my flower again. And I'm just going to be trying to create the different petals. So here I'm going to be stretching. The nice thing is you don't necessarily even need any modeling tools. Already I have one petal. It's so easy to use this and it will naturally dry over time here. And depending on what kind of modeling clay, sometimes you can bake it, as Ellen had said. So you can see I'm already molding it here like this. So you can keep going and have fun and play with it. What I might do after this is, let's say if I would keep going, I'd create a long stem. So let's say I just
Laura,
roll.
I think some people can't see you. They only see the PowerPoint.
Let me stop sharing for a second. How about this? Now you can see me. Thank you. So here you can see I started to sculpt just some very loose petals here using my inspiration of my beautiful daffodil. And what I might do is create a long stem that I could then attach my full flower on. And then what I did is I thought, I'll get creative. I have a lot of those extra paper toilet paper rolls. I could make myself a decorative vase after it dries. So lots of different ways you can go with that. Now, option two is you can make your own pinch pot. So this is called your flowers at home. So what I'm going to do is I have the rest of my model magic that I did. I'm going to roll this into a ball. Roll. So now I have a nice ball that I can start with. Now with it, you're going to push your fingers in. And again, it's so flexible. So you can see I have my fingers right in and I'm going to start to pinch. This is why it's called a pinch pot. Pinch until I have the size and shape and thickness that I want. So this you can see is still a little lumpy. So I'm going to keep working on it. And I know our other conservators have created some beautiful examples as well as they're going to show you some different examples from our collections. So again, mine's a very rough one that I could sculpt into a pot like this that it actually could hold things in. And then what I might do after is either I wouldn't do it with a flower because this is like the daffodil, the petals are so fragile. But if I had a hardier leaf, I could imprint it right in there so that it creates texture. Or I could wait until this is dry and I could paint it so it could have the flowers on top. So there's a lot of different directions you can go with this. I'm going to switch right back into the directions so you can see them written as well. And you guys can keep continuing to make as Ellen and Leah are going to explain and show some examples, and also explain how a conservator might take care of these artworks in a museum. So I'll leave this up for another second here. You can see again, it's just explaining how to pinch the pot that we were talking about, and looking at the flowers that are your inspiration. And then you can press them or paint them after you've created your shape. All right, Ellen.
Okay. So I was going to talk a little bit about some of the pieces we have in our collection that connect to cherry blossoms. And we have a lot of different ones. We only have time to talk about a few today, but if you go on the Museum of Asian Art on our website, you'll see there's all kinds of different stuff about cherry blossoms, and you can see lots of other artworks we have. So these two, one is a screen which shows a scene with lots of cherry blossoms, and then one is a bottle. And I wanted you guys to just take a quick look and tell me if you notice anything specific about them. And if you live in Washington or near Washington and you've ever had a chance to walk around the tidal basin, think about what it's like to be there and look at these and see how they might connect to you. And go ahead and put anything you think about in the chat. You can look at the buildings, you can look at the flowers. What do you notice? Okay, nothing yet. Okay, so if you look, 6 petals on the flower pot. Cool, right? So all those flowers on the bottle, those are cherry blossoms. And so if you look at the screen in that picture, that is a park in Tokyo called Ueno Park. And all of the people there are visiting the cherry blossoms. And so you can see them and they're walking around. And just like we do down by the tidal basin, they're celebrating spring and cherry blossom festival, and they are walking around. And if you look, it's a little hard to see, but in the front, there's a pond. And so people would go on these excursions and they'd go visit the cherry blossom. Sorry, excursions like a journey or a trip. They'd have a fun outing. And one of the things that they would do sometimes is have tea ceremony. And the bottle on the right is something that they would bring to have tea ceremony. And if you go to the next slide, this is that same park now. And people still go, you can see from the pictures, people still go to see the cherry blossoms, even just like in that screen on the picture that we just saw. And so that just gives you an idea of kind of the things that we have in our collection. And next, I'm going to tell you about a piece with cherry blossoms on it that I'll tell you a little bit about how we take care of them. So there, okay. So this is a tea bowl. So take a quick look and tell me what you see. What do you notice? What colors do you see? Anything about the shapes? What do you think? Do you notice anything special on here? Trees planted in groupings, right? So those are cherry trees, just like the ones we were looking at in the park and on the other artworks. And so this particular piece would have also been used in tea ceremony, and it was used a lot. And I don't know if you can see on the rim, you can see sort of a little bit of red and a little bit of gold. This was used so much that it got damaged. And this is a traditional way of repairing tea bowls and other kinds of ceramics, things made out of clay in Japan. And it's called kintsugi. It's done with lacquer, and then it's got gold covering on it. And so that's not something that we do in our museum, but it's something we're very careful to try and preserve. So actually the treatment that I did on this object was to preserve the gold lacquer repair, the old gold lacquer repair. But just like the flowers, all of these things that we've been talking about are really fragile, right? And so we think a lot about how we want to handle things carefully, and we don't want to break them, especially things like ceramics, clay, anything made out of clay. Think about if you dropped a dish in your house, what might happen if you dropped a dish? Sometimes it's okay, but sometimes not so much, right? So we have to we think really carefully about how we hold them and how we use them. And sometimes we have to look at old repairs and see how they were done and fix them. And so Leah is going to talk about some other kinds of cherry blossom art and how she would take care of it at Sam. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Ellen. So these next artworks that I hope will inspire your sculptures are by the artist Deborah Moore, who lives in Seattle, Washington. And take a look, and what do you see? What could these possibly be made out of? They look really real, don't they? To me, they look just like regular real trees that you might see outside, but they're in a museum gallery.
Someone guessed glass.
Oh, well, yes, right off the bat. These are actually made out of glass. Deborah Moore is an incredibly talented glass artist who has actually traveled the world to look at flowers to inspire her artwork, in which she makes really realistic looking trees and flowers. And Laura, you can go to the next one. I can show you some details. This is one of her series of 4 trees that's in the Renwick Gallery right now, which is part of SAM. And this is the cherry tree. And you can see those teeny tiny little petals and all the parts of the flowers. And kind of like you guys are using clay today, she uses glass. And just like ceramic, glass is very delicate. And so it could break pretty easily, but these sculptures are also pretty strong. They're not damaged by light as some other materials are, and they're not as vulnerable to things like water and heat as other materials are. So they're actually pretty strong. Kind of like the cherry trees and the cherry blossoms outside. They're really delicate, but also pretty strong and hardy.
Hey, Leah, just not, you don't have to give an exact dimensions, but thinking about size, how big is this sculpture approximately? Is it the same size as like you or me?
This one in particular I know is taller than me.
Oh, wow.
It's probably about 6 feet tall or a little bit less perhaps. But yeah, she tries to make them life size, which is really amazing. So that rock you see on the bottom is a real rock, a real boulder that she finds that she likes, and then builds those glass sculptures off of them, which is pretty amazing. They're so detailed. She uses a really finely, almost like sand, to help put all the different parts together, and kind of uses glass almost like paint, in addition to being like clay. Sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, there is. Someone's really curious on how you color the glass. How she got those colors.
That's a really good question. So different colors of glass are generally made by different minerals that are in the glass. I can't think of Ellen might know more than I do, but I can't think of which specific minerals will make the different colors of glass. But you can really make any colors you want in glass, which is pretty amazing. And then she uses heat to make that glass elastic and work like clay. So this is the cherry blossom. And I think next we have another example that I just could not show you because it's so pretty. These are the magnolias. This is the magnolia tree. And she specifically makes her sculptures so that you can walk all the way around them. So hopefully when our museum reopens, you can go back into the gallery and be able to walk around these trees and experience them like you might at the tidal basin. So that's kind of what her goal is. She wanted to replicate that experience of being full of wonder outside and looking at cherry blossom. She wanted to replicate that feeling in glass. So instead of being something that only lasts a couple of weeks, like the cherry blossoms, these are permanent sculptures, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, so I hope if there aren't any other questions, I hope these.
Leah, I had a quick question for you, because these ones are made out of glass versus the ones that Ellen had showed us. What's something that you do to make sure you keep these sculptures safe at the museum?
Well, in particular, these are on display. You can see that they're sitting on something that looks gray in color. And that's to make sure that people stay of a distance around it. You can't get right up close to the sculpture. You can still see it really well, but we want to make sure that no one's clothes or their bags or anyone that might want to touch it can't get too close, because that glass, like the ceramic, is pretty brittle. And so although it is strong, it could break pretty easily. And so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Great. And I've seen you also before with other glass sculptures at Renwick, and I don't know if you would need to do this one, but I've seen you dust them before because they can collect some. Is that something where if it's out for a long time, you might have to do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're pretty lucky at the Renwick that there's not a lot of dust accumulation. But I wish I don't have it with me today. But one of my favorite tools ever is a little air puffer. And that would be the perfect tool to use for this kind of sculpture that has so many little parts that it would be really hard to dust like I normally would with like a brush and a vacuum. I would use that air puffer to be even more gentle with the artwork.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, so here we have some examples from Ellen and Leah. I told you that their examples were going to look a little more finished than the ones that I showed. Who did this one here?
That was me. And so I made the pinch pot, and then I had some flowers in the garden that weren't quite open yet. So I took a little one. I know, Laura, you said not to pick them, but they're from my garden.
You can pick them from your own garden. I don't have my own garden, so it would be irresponsible for me to pick someone else's.
So I picked
flowers.
it from my garden, and then I pressed it into the modeling clay. So that's where you see the flowers on the pot.
And then mine, I used that kind of clay that you can put in the oven. And I actually found some leaves outside, and that's how I made those leaves. I pressed the leaves into a piece of green clay and then cut around it. So that's why they look so much like leaves, is that I used an actual leaf to make that pattern in the clay. And then I made some little flowers to go along with it.
Lovely. All right. And as I put in the chat box that at the end of this program, we're going to be doing a virtual show and tell, and we'll get to as many as we can. So if you would like to share your creation with us, please email me at dwrcblunder@si.edu. Again, we just put that in the chat box, and we'll be showing some of them. Any ones that we don't get to that don't have faces in them, we'll also be putting in the learning lab as well. Okay.
And so also someone just put in the chat a great idea, which is that you can go into the garden with your pot and press the flowers into the pot that way, and you don't have to pick them, which I love. I hadn't thought about that. So that's another idea. So so one of the things that we do as conservators is we look at things closely, and just like doctors, we examine them to try and understand what's going on with them, how they look, so that we can take care of them. And we do something called a condition report or a conservation report, where we talk about what we see. And so today we're going to do that with you guys. And I know some of you might have had it printed out, you might have gotten it beforehand. And if you didn't, don't worry, you can just look at this and do it along with me. If your piece is ready, you can do this for your own, or if you want, you can help me look at this piece. So this is actually, I was really inspired by the trees that Leah was talking about, and mine is nowhere near as nice as those, but I had a great time making this. So I wanted to make something that was like the cherry blossom trees that she was showing you. So the first part of the report, it says art conservator's name, which in this case would be me. So I would put down Ellen. And then for the art's name, sometimes things we work with don't have a name. It might just be a description like T-bowl, but sometimes we also give them numbers so we can tell them apart. But sometimes they have more complicated names or titles. And so for this one, I think I'm just going to call it cherry blossom tree. And so for the examination, I want to think about it and look at it carefully and think about ways that I could describe it. So sometimes I'll describe it by the way it looks, but I'll also describe it maybe in terms of if it's fragile or what kind of condition there is. And so, so go ahead and you can do this on your own, or if you want to help me with mine, you can put some words in the chat that you think would help describe my cherry tree. So maybe think about some of the colors you see, things like that. And I'll look and see for what kinds of ideas you have. I think if I were going to describe it, I would talk about it being different colors, right? And then I would say maybe it has a brown trunk, right? There, somebody wrote pink, brown, green, right? 3 colors, terrific. And then I might also talk about how the branches, I don't know if you can see, but if you look closely, the branches are attached to each other, and there you can kind of see where they join each other. And so for me as a conservator, I would want to think about that, because that's probably a place where it's going to be more fragile, right? So I would say fragile at the joins or something like that, so that I would know when I was looking at it. And then once you describe your piece, the next thing is which emoji best describes how you felt making the art. And so for me, I really had a great time. I loved making this piece. It was really fun. So I would put a big smiley face for mine. And then the next part of the report is, what can you do to take care of your art? So just thinking about some of the things that we just talked about, if anybody has some suggestions about how I could take care of my tree, go ahead and put them in the chat. That would be great. And I see someone wrote fragile. Yes, it's very fragile. So for me, I would want to put in, one of the things I would want to do to take care of my tree would be to handle it really carefully, because it would be very easy for me to knock off the flowers or knock off the branches. And yes, I see somebody said keep it in a safe spot. That's right. So at the museum, we have special storage for our artwork to keep it safe. And it would be the same kind of thing. Make sure to put it someplace where it doesn't get knocked over. Dust it. That's another good way to take care of it. I'd have to be really careful dusting it, right? And so actually, I don't know if you can see it. If not, we'll see it later. But I have very special brushes that I use at work that are really soft. So when I dust something, it doesn't get damaged. Make sure it's dry. Yep, that's great. Yeah, exactly. So those are all some terrific ideas. And then I like that one. Someone just said, keep it high so my little brother doesn't break it. Yes, that is an excellent idea. So those are all really good ideas, away from the sun. I love all these ideas you guys are coming up with, and those are all great ways to keep your sculptures safe. And then the last part of the report is, if you want to draw a picture of it, we always like to have either photographs or drawings of the artwork, so it helps us point out things. If I wanted to say this area is really fragile, I could use an arrow and point it right to that area. So yeah, so if you haven't finished your projects yet, that's okay. You can always do your report on your piece later if you want to.
All right. So now, again, we're going to be just thinking about this closing part. Before we wrap up, we'll be doing this closing virtual show and tell, which is so much fun. So I also wanted to encourage you to, in addition to sending us your pictures at dwrclunder@si.edu. And so we will be sharing any of those pictures that don't have any people's faces in them in our learning lab, which we'll be emailing out to everyone. But also, I want you to encourage you that after this program, to take a look around your home and your community and really go outside. It's, starting to be so beautiful out. Think about what kind of flowers you see. Look at them from far away and then up close and see how the textures have changed. Again, we recommend not picking them unless they're in your own garden. And then also look around your home and see if you see anything that has flowers or leaves on it. And think about, just like Ellen did with the Art Doctor report, conservation report, how might you best take care of these items at home? All right, so I am going to now stop sharing the screen. I'm going to be collecting all the images you send to us. I'm also going to be stopping the recording too. So the show and tell part won't be in the recording. And I know that Ellen and Leah can talk a little bit more about some of the tools and show them up close. So let me stop sharing right here, and I will stop the recording. And so if you joined us for the recording, thank you so much for joining us.